Have you ever felt the world breathe beneath ancient stone? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, where forgotten places still dream. Settle in, slow your breath, and let the past rise gently around you. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell us where and what time you're watching from. Now, let us return to a world that never truly vanished, only waited. The giants that guarded the wind. The valley opened slowly, like a quiet breath held in stone and sky. In the heart of the Hindu Kush, a spine of mountains ancient enough to have forgotten when they first rose, the wind moves like memory. It slides through the high passes, brushing over gravel, whispering through reeds by the river, tugging at the edges of wheat fields where farmers still bend quietly to tend the earth, as their ancestors did centuries ago. At the center of this high, sunlit amphitheater of mountains, stood giants. They did not walk. They never spoke. They never raised a hand or closed an eye. Yet they held a presence so profound that even now, long after their forms were shattered and scattered like seed into dust, the air still remembers the outline of their bodies. Two figures carved straight from the cliff wall of Bamiyan, rising not as monuments to war or kingship, but as stillness given shape, as devotion made stone. Travelers crossing the ancient silk roads wrote of them in low tones, not like one marvels at jewels or treasures, but as one greets a great silence. They were not to be admired, they were to be approached. The tallest stood at nearly 55 meters, a vertical being carved out of mountain, its robes flowing in gentle stone cascades. Beside it, the smaller, though still towering beyond imagination, stood at roughly 38 meters. At their feet lay a valley that once thrummed, not with armies or industry, but with prayer, philosophy, and footsteps made soft by purpose. Even now, those who walk here speak softly, even when no one is near, as though the cliff itself listens, as though the wind carries every word into the chambers where monks once sat cross-legged in half-lit caves, singing sutras whose syllables dissolved into dust and radiance. It is tempting with modern eyes to call this emptiness, to say nothing remains because nothing stands. But the valley of Bamiyan is not empty. Absence here is presence. Silence here is not lack, it is memory, breathing. Stand beneath the cliff just after dawn, and the sun washes the sandstone face with gold. Shadows retreat slowly into niches, into doorways carved high above the valley floor. Doorways that once led into fresco-filled chapels and meditation chambers, their walls alive with pigments that glowed like captured dawn. You can still see some of that color if you look closely. Cinnabar red, lapis blue brought from distant mines, traded across mountains and seas, colors stolen from fire, earth and sky by hands that believed the stone itself might someday speak, and perhaps once it did. Long before the statues took shape, this valley was a bowl of rivers, migrations, and voices. Ancient nomads crossed here trailing wool-laden sheep, believing spirits lived in peaks and water and wind. Later came Zoroastrians, carrying the fire of creation, chanting to Ahura Mazda under open sky. Then travelers from Gandhara, where Greek sculptural form met Indian meditation under the sway of empire and enlightenment, found this mountain and saw, in its vast, sheer face, a canvas for stillness. They did not build temples around the rock. They carved the temple from the rock. A monastic city bloomed within the cliff wall. Hundreds of caves, linked by carved stairs and hidden passages, like a hive built by those who sought honey in silence. Monks slept on stone beds covered by reed mats and lit lamps not for light alone, but to keep vigil against illusion. Breath echoed down corridors. Murmured mantras vibrated through sandstone. 500, 1,000 years. The valley listened. The statues were the guardians, not fierce, not stern, but compassionate, patient, awake. They looked not down upon the world as judges, but across it as witnesses. Their presence taught scale, of land, of time, of humility. Travelers approaching from the west would first see the shoulder of one statue catching the evening sun. From the east, the folds of drapery seemed to ripple like cloth touched by wind, and when the moon rose pale and slow, the giants appeared to glow, outlines carved in silver, as though the mountain exhaled light. Imagine arriving here in the 5th century, journey-weary, feet dust-covered, carrying prayer beads rubbed smooth by faith and sweat. You step into the valley, and silence blooms around you. The wind quiets. Even animals pause, sniffing the air. Then you see the figures, larger than thought can hold. You would not speak. You would remove your shoes. You would stand, breathe, and find a stillness you did not know your body could remember. This is what Bamiyan was, a frontier not of empire, but of contemplation, not a barrier, but a threshold. It lay not between nations, but between pace and peace. Years folded into centuries. Dynasties rose, faltered, and vanished. Traders from India, Persia, and China passed through, their tongues braided by commerce and curiosity. Some left carvings, inscriptions, fragments of ceramic bowls. Others left nothing but footpaths. And in the cliff, caves multiplied, some small as a single breath, others vast as the chambers of a heart. Frescoes grew like gardens on walls, winged figures, lotus patterns, meditative faces, half closed, half smiling. The pigments were grounded minerals mixed with animal glue, applied layer by layer with brushes made of hair. There is a quiet devotion in this kind of work, the belief that color can carry compassion across time. Then, the world changed. New faiths moved across the plains. Islam rose and flowed into the valley like a river of light. And here, in Bamiyan, something unusual happened. Where elsewhere faith clashed with memory, here it bowed to it. The statues remained. Muslim poets described them not as idols but as miracles. Local shepherds told stories of angels turned to stone. Scholars wrote of them as landmarks, signs of an age when stone breathed meditation. For a millennium after their carving, the giants watched over wheat fields, watched caravans pass, watched clouds gather over winter peaks, watched laughter and hunger and war beyond their sight, but never in their valley. They were stillness itself, a philosophy carved into geology. Even when kings came seeking conquest, they did not shatter these figures. Some believed them protected, others perhaps felt the weight of history and chose humility. Time weathered the paint from their faces. Earthquakes cracked their robes, but still they stood. Until absence came not by weathering, nor erosion, nor faith in transition, but in a moment. A blast louder than the voice of mountains, dust where silence once breathed. A wound carved not by nature, not by pilgrimage, not by time, but by force. Yet this story is not about destruction. It is about what remains. Because here is the truth. Statues can be shattered, stone can fall, but presence is not so easily erased. Stand beneath the empty niches today and you will feel something vast. Not grief alone, but continuity. The wind here does not mourn. It remembers. It threads through the voids where robes once folded. It hums softly through the caves where monks once sang. It brushes the valley grass with the same tender patience it did 1,000 years ago. A local shepherd once said, "They did not fall. They stepped into the wind, and if you listen, really listen, you may believe him." Because here, in this quiet world of wide sky and living stone, absence is a doorway. Stillness is not silence, and memory stands tall, even when its body is gone. The valley still breathes, the cliff still holds shape, the earth still carries the imprint of feet that once stood in prayer. Nothing truly vanishes where reverence once lived. The wind guards what stone once held, like a promise, like a heartbeat, and the giants, though unseen, still stand. Every morning, the sun still climbs the ridges of the Hindu Kush with slow certainty, as it has for ages far beyond stone or empire. The light does not rush, it arrives in silence, brushing the cliffs in pale gold, revealing the soft valley below, orchards, streams, and winding dust paths where children once carried water jugs, and shepherds once whistled for goats that grazed among ancient roots. Even without statues, the niche caverns catch the sun like ceremonial bowls, glowing as though something vast still stands there receiving light. Birds occasionally fly through those immense hollow frames, wings cutting across the emptiness, momentarily filling the outline with motion, silhouettes shaped exactly like the echoes of forgotten guardians. The valley does not cling to sorrow, it breathes through remembrance, not grief. Farmers bend over fields of barley and wheat, their tools dipping into earth grown fertile by centuries of river silt. Their ancestors worked this same soil when the statues were young, when travelers tied prayer flags outside cave chapels and monks ground lapis lazuli into dust, so brilliant, it gleamed like fragments of sky. To farm here is to live in the quiet company of ghosts, not haunting or heavy, but gentle, like a hand resting on one's shoulder in reassurance. When wind moves through the poplar trees, their leaves shimmer like fish scales in sunlight, creating a soft wave of silver across the valley floor. Children laugh near irrigation channels that sparkle under morning light. Donkeys shuffle under bundles of brush and grain. Women hum to themselves as they knead dough in courtyard ovens, glancing occasionally toward the cliffs without fear, without ceremony, as though the statues, though unseen, remain participants in daily life. Memory here is not a burden, it is a companion. Season after season, time folds softly. Spring blossoms along the riverbanks, summer wheat ripens under endless blue, autumn leaves fall like old stories released from branch to wind, and winter settles with snow, muffling the valley in a white so quiet it feels like prayer. Through it all, the mountain watches. Once, monks carved their cells into that same cliff, chiseling alcoves with patient repetition. In the evenings they would step out and look across this valley, fields glowing under low sun, clouds drifting like pale sails across the sky, and see not isolation but unity. Wind carried chanting from chamber to chamber. Lamps burned in niches like constellations embedded in rock. Today, though the chants are gone, you can still stand near the cliff at dusk and feel the warmth of something ancient lingering in the stone, as if the rock remembers voices and memory itself is a temperature. Some evenings, shepherds sit at the base of the mountain, leaning on crooks, staring upward as the sky turns violet. They speak little. They do not need to. The cliffside, hollow yet whole, tells the story for them. A local elder once said, "When mountains lose their statues, they do not lose their soul." He lifted a handful of dust, let it fall through his fingers, and added, "What is carved can break, what is remembered cannot." Scholars and archaeologists visit sometimes, their notes filled with diagrams and careful handwriting. They measure cave depth, trace pigment layers, collect fragments of plaster decorated with faint lines of lotus petals and halos. They speak gently, with reverence instead of detachment, because this is not simply an excavation site. It is a sanctuary where silence is as significant as stone. They walk the wooden platforms built along the face, brushing fingertips against sandstone, as though touching an altar. They kneel to examine fragments of stucco that once formed delicate folds of robe and neckline. Every piece of pigment, every chipped carving, feels like a heartbeat still echoing within the earth. And they write quietly, noting that while the statues have fallen, the art continues, embedded in fragments like seeds waiting for rain. Sometimes they bring students. The younger ones often fall quiet as they approach the cliff. Even without the towering figures, there is a weight here, not oppressive, but profound, the kind of stillness that gently compels humility. One student once whispered, staring upward, "It feels like they're standing in the wind, just where we can't see." Her professor only nodded. Because there are places where absence is not void, it is a continuation. Evenings bring a different softness. Smoke curls from mud brick homes, carrying the smell of baking bread and simmering tea. Crickets stir. The wind cools and slows, pressing gently against the valley like a warm blanket settling before sleep. And the cliffs darken from honey gold to deep violet, then to shadow. The niches blend into night sky, hollow shapes outlined only by star glow. If you sit quietly long enough, the night reveals its own language. Far off, a dog barks. River water murmurs across stone, and then silence. Not emptiness, but a vast, living hush that fills the chest and slows the pulse. The same hush monks once listened to as they sat cross-legged in chambers warmed by flickering oil lamps. In that silence, you can almost imagine footsteps, soft sandals along stone corridors, the swish of robes, the faint ring of bronze bowls struck gently to start meditation. But the sounds are only memory drifting through air, not haunting but healing. A mother tells her child old stories, not about war, not about loss, but about guardians. She points toward the cliff, toward nothing, and speaks of giants shaped from mountain and devotion. In her tale, they do not fall, they simply step into the wind when the world changes, becoming unseen sentinels who watch not with eyes but with presence. Children listening do not picture absence, they imagine stone figures walking into sky, and in their dreams the valley hums with reverence, not sorrow. Memory becomes myth. Myth becomes comfort, comfort becomes tradition. And so the giants continue, not standing in stone, but standing in story, breath, rhythm, earth. In spring, when wildflowers push through soil, and birds return to nest among rock ledges, petals scatter across the fields like tiny prayers. Red poppies, yellow wild marigolds, delicate purple blooms sway under mountain air. Every color looks brighter against the old stone backdrop, as though nature is painting what time removed. In summer, shepherd boys lead goats up grassy slopes, singing old folk songs to the animals, voices carried by breeze into caverns where frescoes once shone. Their songs mingle with echoes, making the cliff feel alive. In winter, when snow gathers like down upon ledges and roofs, the valley becomes still again, and footprints fade quickly, swallowed by the quiet white. The mountain stands wrapped in pale softness, like a monk draped in wool, eyes half closed against the cold. All seasons belong to memory, and memory belongs to the valley. There is a saying among elders here, statues do not last forever, but the space they leave does not empty. This is the story of Bamiyan, not the story of destruction, that is merely a moment, a breath in centuries. The true story is continuity, wind carving new shapes, sun gilding rock as if blessing what once stood, people living simply, children running barefoot through fields, roofs smoking at dusk, a farmer whispering gratitude to the earth, a girl pausing, looking up at the cliff, feeling not loss but inheritance. Because even in absence, guardians remain, and when the moon rises over the Hindu Kush, pale as polished bone, and light spills across the empty niches, it looks again like two figures holding space with quiet dignity, as though paused mid-prayer, waiting not for worship, but for the world to remember gentleness. The giants that once guarded the wind do not need bodies anymore. The wind itself carries them. It moves through wheat stalks, brushes across cave walls, strokes rough sandstone, and slips into the palm of anyone who stands still long enough to listen. In their place, the valley breathes, still, soft, enduring. The cliff remains, hollow and whole. The sky remains, vast and remembering. The wind remains, patient and eternal, and so do they, unseen, unbroken, standing always in the silence between mountains and time, not watching the world fall apart, but watching it continue, and waiting, gently, for humanity to remember silence again. The crown of the sleeping gods. The plateau rises like a dream that refused to end. Not a mountain in the ordinary sense, but a table of stone lifted into the sky, as though the earth once reached upward toward the heavens, and froze mid-gesture. The people who lived long before maps and borders called it different names: the House of Gods, the Island in the Sky, and in soft whispers passed from campfire to campfire, they called it the place where the sleeping gods lay crowned in mist. To look at Mount Roraima even once is to understand why. It does not rise gradually. There is no gentle slope that leads toward its summit, no comfort of foothills to ease the eye upward. Instead, it stands like a wall between worlds, straight, solemn, immense. Sheer faces of stone rise 1,000 meters in near vertical ascent, their surfaces streaked with ancient water paths, coated by moss as old as time, glowing silver when morning fog presses close. And above the cliffs the top is flat, a lost continent resting on pillars of cloud. The wind here carries more than air. It carries distance, it carries age, it carries the hush of a place that has waited longer than memory remembers waiting. Rorima does not announce itself the way other mountains do. It simply exists with the quiet authority of something that has always been and will always be, long after human footsteps fade from soil. Local people, Pimon, Taurapang, Makushi, never spoke of climbing it. That would be like speaking of climbing the sky. It was not a summit to conquer, but a presence to respect, a boundary between the world of breath and the world of dream. There are stories whispered that the plateau is a fragment left from a time before the separation of earth and heaven, that once all land was one, and gods walked openly among rivers and forests. But when humans forgot their place, the gods lifted their cities up, tearing the earth like cloth, carrying their kingdoms into the sky so only the worthy might someday find them again. From that ancient tearing, the Tepuis were born, the Table Mountains of the Gowana Highlands. Some say there were once tens of thousands, spreading across a green world beyond imagination. Today only a scattered few remain, like teeth of a drowned titan breaking through ocean surface. Rorima is the greatest among them. Stand near its base and time loosens its grip. The forest breathes with deep, steady lungs. Cicadas hum in long, slow pulses. Mist curls around roots and vanishes without hurry. Even the birds, brilliant macaws, black-hooded toucans, tiny sapphire hummingbirds, speak rarely here. It is a place where noise feels like trespass. Travelers arriving centuries ago felt it before they understood it. Their journals describe not excitement, but quiet, not triumph, but awe. There are very few places in the world where silence is not the absence of sound, but a presence of its own. Rorima is one. To approach it is to feel as though you are nearing the edge of something ancient, something that has seen ages pass like shadows, and has chosen not to move with them. Rain falls often here, not the casual passing rain of summer fields, but the slow, deliberate kind that feels like a cleansing, like the mountain is being washed by the sky that birthed it. Water runs from its heights in silver ribbons, dropping into the forest below, feeding rivers that wander toward the Orinoco, the Amazon, the Essequibo, arteries of a continent pulsing with hidden life. Travelers who follow the Quebrada de Jaspa, the stream that runs across bedrock polished red as jaspa, sometimes pause and stare forward for long minutes before realizing they are breathing differently, slower, softer. Rorima does that. It teaches you to breathe without ever speaking a word. The climb to its summit is not simply physical, it is a shift of pace, of thought. The jungle trail narrows beneath towering trees whose roots grip soil like remembering hands. Ferns brush your legs. Bromeliads cradle tiny pools of water that shimmer with miniature worlds. Bright frogs, insect larvae, leaves drifting like lost boats. Every step is a reminder that life thrives in hidden corners. And then, without warning, the vegetation thins. Stone emerges beneath foot. Mist rises. The sound of dripping water turns to hush. And before you fully realize, you stand at the base of the cliff that looks less like stone and more like horizon made solid. Explorer after explorer described this moment using the same word: impossible. Not difficult, not steep, impossible. For centuries, the plateau top was untouched by human feet. Not because no one wished to reach it, but because it felt as though ascent would disturb the structure of the world itself. The mountain rose like an altar where creation rested its head. Those who tried in early eras left no trace. The mountain accepted only patience, only humility. When at last a natural ramp was discovered, a path carved by time rather than will, it revealed itself slowly, like a secret testing your devotion. Moss-coated stone, wet from eternal cloud drift, led upward in switchbacks carved not by human hand, but by millions of seasons. The climb feels less like ascent and more like passage. The higher you go, the thinner the world below seems to become. Birdsong fades, air cools, mist thickens, even the beating of your heart feels quieter, as if your body knows it is nearing a place where loudness has no meaning. And then there is no forest, no vines, no soft soil, only stone. Stone like cracked parchment, stone like dried riverbed, stone like the surface of another world. The top of Rorima does not look earthly, no gentle curves of grass, no familiar shapes. Instead, it is a field of ancient rock twisted into sculptures that seem half-remembered by dreams, pillars and domes and forms that resemble forgotten beasts, silent guardians, sleeping sentinels. Pools gather between the stone slabs, dark water holding reflections of sky so deep they seem to show another world beneath. This is the place where legends say gods fell asleep, their bodies dissolving into stone, their thoughts becoming clouds. When the wind moves across the plateau, it carries no haste. It is slow, purposeful, the kind of breeze that feels as though it is thinking. Geologists say the rocks here are some of the oldest on Earth, nearly 2 billion years old. Time itself rests differently on their surface. They erode not in decades, not in centuries, but in geological breaths that last longer than human civilization. Standing among them, you do not measure age by years, but by silence. There is water everywhere. Water that falls as mist, as rain, as veil. Water that gathers in deep black pools where tiny carnivorous plants float, patiently waiting for insects. Water that trickles through grooves older than language. Sometimes, in rare glimmers of sunlight, the plateau gleams as though polished, not with human ambition, but with time itself. And in the distance, across great flat expanses of stone, you see cliffs fall away into clouds. You see lightning arc below instead of above. You see rain drift upward, pulled into currents only patient mountains understand. This is not a place humans conquered. It is a place that allowed us to arrive only as guests. Walk far enough across its surface, and you encounter towers of rock that look like half-formed figures, shoulders, heads, hands clasped in sleep. Locals say the gods rested here after shaping the rivers, and that in seasons when the rains are heavy, you can hear them breathing under the stone. Listen closely, and the plateau speaks in ways that are not language. A drip echoes, wind brushes past ear. Rock expands in heat and contracts in dusk chill, sighing like someone turning in deep slumber. At night, mist blankets the surface like a second sky. Stars flicker above and below. And in the quiet between breaths, the mountain feels endless, as though the world narrowed to this single crown and all elsewhere fell away. The name Rorima itself means mother of rivers, and the plateau earns it. Water born here travels across an entire continent, feeding jungles, nourishing lands thousands of miles away. A cradle not for gods alone, but for life. Standing on this stone, you begin to understand why those who first lived here believed creation had roots in this place. For how could a summit hold lakes and forests and glass-clear streams unless it remembered the first world? Even explorers who came with compasses and notebooks wrote in hushed awe. Their notes betray something unusual in scientific documentation: reverence. Some wrote of feeling watched, not by menace but by patience, as if the plateau itself regarded humans as passing shadows. In one century, a botanist wrote, "It is not we who discover Rorima, but Rorima who allows herself to be noticed." Plants here are older than memory. Ferns like emerald feathers, tiny orchids that bloom only in cloud, moss that glows faintly under moonlight. And then there are the insect eaters, delicate traps of deep red petals that open patiently, like eyes waking. Life here is slow, intentional. It has no need for haste, because it has been here longer than time has bothered to measure. And everywhere, water moves, falling across rock in endless curtains that dissolve in wind, forming rivers that vanish over edges like silk dropped into sky, gathering in pools where the surface looks so still you feel hesitant to disturb it, as though it might swallow memory as easily as reflection. Travelers who set foot in one such pool say they feel not cold, but clarity. For an instant, a stilling, as though mind and mountain align in breath. Then ripples spread outward, circles widening, like the plateau is answering in its own language. And somewhere, beneath layers of stone, something ancient inhales. The people here say gods do not speak in voices, they speak in landscapes. Rorima speaks in silence, in cloud, in stone worn smooth by existence. It does not bless, it does not punish, it simply is. And in its presence, you remember how to simply be too. Walk long enough, and you lose the sense of time. Meals become irrelevant, hours stretch like mist, footprints disappear in rain. And every now and then, you look up and realize you are standing at the threshold of the world, where land ends and cloud begins. Some say the plateau floats, some say it breathes, some say it sleeps. The truth feels like all three, and always the sense returns. You are not on top of a mountain. You are standing at the crown of something older than gods. And then the night comes slowly. First the birds fall silent, then insects hush, then even thought itself softens, settling like mist across stone. Darkness here is not sudden, it is gentle, cautious, like a hand lowering a veil. the sky deepens into indigo, then into a shade darker than memory, darker than time. Stars appear not scattered, but placed, precise, deliberate points of light stitched into the dome above. Their brightness feels ancient, unchanged by the rise and fall of worlds below. A single breath of wind drifts across the plateau. It feels like the mountain exhaling. Somewhere far below, a waterfall sighs, but up here it is just vibration in the bones, as though the earth speaks in tremors no ear can translate. In the dark, the stone shapes seem to lean closer. Their edges blur, their shadows thicken. This is not a place of fear, it is a place of remembering. The air grows cool, not biting, not harsh, but clean, crisp, as though it carries the very first breath the world ever took. You wrap your arms around yourself, not for warmth, but for stillness, anchoring your body so your mind does not drift off into the endless sky. Above, constellations wheel slowly. Below, the clouds glow faintly, carrying moonlight like rivers of silver fog. Some nights, lightning flickers beneath the clouds. Storms wander in the valleys far below, invisible, but for their sparks, veins of electricity threading through a hidden world. You are above weather, above thunder, above rain. Watching storms from above feels like watching history, distant, inevitable, not meant to touch you. Time does not pass normally here. Minutes stretch, hours fold. The boundary between night and dawn blurs into one long breath, and when dawn does finally arrive, it does not break, it seeps. A pale glow touches the eastern edge of the horizon, a slow wash of lavender, then gold. Light crawls across the stone, revealing pools like polished obsidian, revealing moss that glimmers faintly from dew. Rorima wakes without sound. Even the wind waits. A thin shaft of sunlight touches the edge of the plateau and spills forward, not like day beginning, but like creation choosing to happen again. The light feels new, fragile, reverent. You watch as the first rays reach stone pillars, then pools, then the strange twisted formations that rise like guardians carved from the dreams of the earth. And for a brief moment, everything glows, not dramatically, not with spectacle, but with the quiet, overwhelming radiance of something sacred. You breathe, slow, deep, and the breath feels shared, as though the plateau inhales with you. The day here does not rush, it unfolds. Clouds drift in low, brushing the rock, dissolving, then reforming as though sculpted by invisible hands. Sunlight filters through them in shifting beams, one moment bright, the next muted, painting the ground in moving ribbons of gold and silver. The world below wakes with sound. Birds, insects, river song, echo of monkeys calling in distant trees. But here, atop the plateau, sound arrives softened, distant, like memory instead of presence. Here, life is unhurried. Tiny frogs, black as obsidian, hop between wet moss and stone. Orchid petals tremble in the smallest breeze. Carnivorous plants stretch open slowly, patient as stone, waiting for the world to come to them. Nothing hunts with speed here. Nothing blooms in haste. Everything knows time differently. There are places on the plateau where water gathers in shallow basins carved by 1,000 years. Peer into them and you see not reflection but depth, sky layered beneath stone as though two worlds overlap. Drop a pebble in and the ripples expand so slowly they look like rings drawn by an unseen hand. The indigenous elders say these pools are eyes, the mountain watching not outward but inward, into its own dreaming. Walk far enough and the land shifts. Stone breaks open into canyons carved by rivers older than mountains. Mists rise in soft columns, curling like incense smoke from unseen altars. Walls drip with ancient water, surface glimmering like quartz. And then, there are the caves. Openings just wide enough to enter, but deep enough that light hesitates to follow. Step inside, and the sound of your footsteps fades against wet stone. Water drips slowly, steadily, as though marking time not for humans but for the mountain itself. Sit within these caves long enough, and the quiet breaks you open gently. Thoughts thin, breath deepens, mind empties, not by force but by permission. Here, silence is not the absence of noise, it is the presence of peace. Outside, wind rises again, moving across stone like memory's hand brushing over pages. The sun arcs slowly, clouds roll, dissolve, return. On some afternoons, rain falls in fine silver sheets, thin as silk threads, vanishing before they reach the pools. Other times, rain gathers strength, a curtain drawn across sky, soft but relentless. It washes the rock clean, it feeds the waiting moss, it carves new lines in the stone, patient as breath. You stand under that rain, and it feels ancient, as though each drop carries a story, a season, a forgotten world. When the rain stops, the air shimmers, mist rises in gentle coils, sunlight breaks through again, painting everything in quiet brilliance, and then, evening returns. Golden light brushes the plateau, warm but fading. Shadows stretch long across the stone. The plateau exhales, the world softens, and once again, you are reminded. You are not conquering this place, you are being permitted to witness it. Night falls, stars return, clouds drift below like oceans, silence gathers like a blanket, The gods sleep again. The crown of the ancient world rests, and the plateau dreams. Nothing has changed. Everything has changed. The wind moves, the stone endures, you breathe, and the mountain breathes with you, not as master and visitor, but as two ancient things remembering each other. The circle that outlasted time. It rises from the quiet fields of Wiltshire, like a thought older than memory, a circle so vast that to stand within it is to feel the horizon bend. Before stone, before iron, before the written ways of keeping time, someone walked these gentle hills, placed hand upon earth, and imagined a boundary not to claim but to listen through. Avebury was not built to dominate. It was shaped to remember. Here the land does not shout. It breathes. Rolling fields soften into hollow lanes, chalk beneath soil glowing pale in early light. Sheep graze where ancestors once gathered, their wool brushing stones that have waited longer than empires. The wind moves softly through hedges, lifting the scent of wet grass, old earth, lichen, and somewhere between the hush of morning and the low cooing of doves on farmhouse roofs, a feeling settles in the chest. The world here is patient. Avebury is older than Stonehenge, wider too, a circle so broad that a village now rests inside it, unaware perhaps that doorsteps and gardens stand where ritual lines once pulsed. The stones do not loom, they linger, massive yet gentle, weather-rounded, moss-streaked, leaning as if tired from holding so much silence. They are not carved to perfection, they are raw, taken from the earth as the earth made them, shaped only by wind and time and the hands that raised them. Approach one slowly, and it becomes a companion, fissures like veins, lichen like continents, shadows that hold the warmth of morning light long after the sun shifts. Lay your palm against its side, and the stone is cool, then subtly warm, as though holding heat from centuries of dawns. You might feel foolish for a moment pressing hand to a rock, but the sensation does not feel foolish. It feels right, like touching the frame of a doorway as you step through. For these stones are doorways, not into rooms, nor into tombs, but into rhythm, into sky, into something the builders felt so deeply they had to lift earth itself to express it. Long before plows and parish bells, before roads and hedgerows, these fields were open, a living canvas. People moved through them not to arrive, but to become part of their movement. They marked seasons not as units to control, but as breaths of a world they belonged to. When they placed these stones, they did not measure ownership, they measured belonging. Picture them figures clothed in hides, in woven fiber, in hair tied against the wind. Children carrying small flints, elders leaning on staffs carved with patterns no one now remembers. They drag stones across wooden rollers, across wet chalk soil, singing low, not to command the labor, but to honor the act. They set each stone upright, and place hands upon it together. And in that moment, the landscape is changed, not by force, but by invitation. The stones form circles, and circles within circles. Ditches carved wide and deep, embankments thrown high, not to defend but to embrace. A place not of walls but of welcome. And when the work is done, they stand back, breath slow, eyes lifted toward sky. Stars look down in ancient recognition. The stones are not an intrusion, they are a continuation. Time softens detail but not intent. When you walk here in late afternoon, the sun low and warm, shadows stretch long between stones like threads connecting ages. A tractor hums in a distant field, a crow lands silently on a fence. A couple strolls the grassy path, fingers laced, oblivious to the deep pulse beneath their feet. They laugh softly, unaware their footsteps fall where ceremony once flowed like water. Yet the place remembers. For thousands of years, people have walked this circle, some seeking meaning, some seeking quiet, some simply walking through without knowing why it feels different here. But they all feel it, paths worn by pilgrims now disguised as footpaths, lines drawn by ritual now called trackways, and beneath them all the chalk, ancient seabed, glimmers white, as though holding the memory of oceans and offering it to the sky. Stand still long enough, and the boundary between now and then thins. The breeze that rustles grass might just as easily be breath from the past. The distant bleat of sheep dissolves, replaced by the thump of skin drums, the murmur of voices speaking in rhythms lost to language. Archaeologists sift soil here and find flint scrapers, antler picks, fragments of pottery etched with simple lines, each piece a whisper. They find human bones too, not buried in grief, but placed with reverence, as though returning kin to the circle. They find offerings of chalk beads, boar tusks, polished stones. Nothing grand, nothing gilded, only things that held meaning greater than value. For those who built Avebury, wealth was not owned, it was shared, with land, with sky, with ancestors and those yet to come. They did not carve kings into rock, they carved time into earth. There is a henge here, a ditch so wide and deep it once would have seemed like a scar across the land. But it is not a scar, it is a cradle. Earth lifted high, ditch dug low, encircling space like arms. The circle is not to keep out, it is to hold within. In midsummer, dawn light enters along an avenue of paired stones. Now only fragments remain, but once they stretched for over a mile. Imagine the procession, feet moving in dew, breath visible in early morning, voices whispering as first light glimmers and strikes stone. A column of figures walking from water meadows to circle, marking not conquest, not invention, but return. Return to what? To where? Perhaps simply to belonging. Night falls slowly in Avebury. The horizon blushes, hedges darken, bats trace spirals in air. The stones, pale by day, turn shadow-rich, absorbing what little light remains. Owls call. A faint smell of wood smoke drifts from a cottage, and in the hush that settles, something lifts, as though the land exhales, relieved of day's attention. It is in this twilight that Avebury breathes loudest. You walk among stones that lean slightly, worn edges softened by rain and centuries. Grass cool beneath your feet. A rabbit darts from hedgerow to burrow, tail flicking like a tiny ghost. The village pub lights blink on behind you, but you do not turn. You keep walking, stone to stone, like counting pulses. When you stop, sound sinks away. You become aware of your heartbeat, small but steady. The horizon fades, stars prick open, and there you stand. Not tourist, not observer, but participant in a rhythm older than thought. Some speak of energies here, of lines in the land that converge like currents. Others speak only of calm, a hush that seeps through skin and settles in bone. Both are true, perhaps. Both are attempts at language for something that needs none. For centuries, the circle slept under soil and roots, nearly hidden. Farmers plowed fields that bent around unseen shapes. Children climbed what they thought were natural rises. The land held its memory quietly, waiting. Then came the recent centuries, fences, plows, straight lines drawn over curves, stones toppled, broken, buried. Yet the circle endured. Even when forgotten, it remained. Even when marked only by humps in grass, it waited. Rediscovery did not awaken it. It had never slept. Today some stones have returned to standing. Others lie heavy where they fell. Some rest beneath lawns, beneath houses, beneath hedges, but they are still here. Not ruined, resting, for circles do not vanish. They continue, whether seen or not. And here, where chalk meets sky, where sheep graze unbothered by myth, where tourists walk without knowing why their shoulders ease, Avebury continues. Quiet, patient, present. It does not tell you what it is. It lets you feel it. Stay long enough, and you begin to notice small things. The way grass bends always slightly inward. The way birds circle overhead then drift away. The way your breath slows without you willing it. You do not enter Avebury. You fall into its rhythm. You match its pace. The people who built this place lived in rhythm too. They watched sunrise and moonset, solstice and equinox, not as events but as breath. They counted not hours but harvests, not days but fireside stories. They were not chasing time, they were keeping company with it. Avebury is not a monument. It is a conversation between earth and sky. The stones are the punctuation, we are the pause, and in that pause, the world feels kinder. Take another step. The path curves. A stone rises before you, massive, quiet. Lean against it, close eyes. The air hums faintly, wind, blood, grass murmuring, memory breathing. Open eyes and stars wheel slow overhead. The circle does not ask for belief. It simply asks that you be here. And so you stand, and the night stands with you, and the stones stand around you, not watching, not judging, simply existing, and allowing you to exist too. Here is where we stop thinking in years and start feeling in seasons, where footsteps do not mark progress but presence, where history is not behind you but around you. Here, under sky and beside stone, you become small, and that smallness is not loss but comfort. Time passes differently in circles, and Avebury waits, not for worship, not for explanation, but simply for the next breath, the next footstep, the next dusk when another soul wanders between its stones and remembers how to be still. The morning comes quietly here, as though the sun knows not to startle the earth awake. Light arrives like breath on glass, slow, tender, unsure at first. Shadows withdraw gently, revealing dew trembling on blades of grass, pooled in the hollows where sheep press their bodies through the night. Mist clings low, drifting across the ditch and bank, softening edges until stone, field and air bleed into one another. And then, one by one, the stones appear again, not materializing, but remembering themselves into sight. Birdsong starts cautiously. A rook calls from a bare branch near the lane, its voice rough and ancient, like gravel shifting beneath wheels long gone. Robins flit close to the stones, hopping small circles in the grass, as though performing tiny rituals of their own. Your breath feels clearer here. The first inhale of morning carries cold chalk scent, damp earth, a faint sweetness of clover, and beneath it all something older, a stillness that does not belong to dawn, but to the place itself. The stillness is not quiet, it is presence. Walk across the grass, and the earth yields softly beneath your feet, as though welcoming your step rather than bearing it. Sheep track their familiar paths, unconcerned by history, indifferent to mystery, yet part of both. A farmer crosses a distant field, coat collar up, boots sinking in mud. Life goes on as it always has, gently, persistently, unaware that the ground beneath carries millennia of memory. And that perhaps is the humbling truth of Avebury. It was never built to be admired, it was built to be lived with. Step past a stone and another reveals itself further ahead, the way stars appear one after another in a darkening sky. Each carries a different shape, some tall and thin, others stocky, some curved like backs bent from time, some standing with an ease that suggests endless patience. They seem arranged not by precision but by intuition, as though placed where the earth whispered, here and here and here. Archaeologists measure alignments, solstice sunrise, equinox moonrise, stellar arcs of vanished constellations, but standing here it feels less like alignment and more like conversation, as if the builders were not calculating, but listening. A breeze moves through the grass, bending stalks in soft waves. Somewhere unseen, a skylark begins to rise, voice spiraling upward until sound is thread and sky is loom, and with it comes an awareness. These stones have heard every song this land has ever known. Storm chants of winter winds, lullabies of lambs in spring, harvest laughter, quiet weeping, whispered vows, hushed prayers. And now your breath joins theirs, a single note in a chorus, spanning 4,000 years. The ditch curves, the bank follows, and suddenly you find yourself moving without thinking, as though guided, not compelled, invited. The circle leads, and you walk. Time slips. Steps become slow, deliberate. You are not rushing toward meaning, you are sinking into it. For a moment you imagine those who came first, their hair tangled by wind, hands stained with earth, faces turned toward sky. They did not carve gods in stone, they carved space for sky and soul to meet. Children played here, weaving through stones as sheep do now. Fires burned where grass now grows. People sang not to fill silence, but to accompany it. And when death came, as it always does, they returned their loved ones to this soil not as loss, but as continuation. To die here was not an ending, it was going home. A kestrel hangs in still air, wings trembling like thought. Beneath it a rabbit pauses, nose quivering, ears alert, fur bright in morning sun. Even the hunt feels sacred here, as though nature's rhythm is ceremony, not violence. Walk farther, and you reach a stone taller than most. Its surface rough with quartz veins like pale lightning frozen in rock. You touch it, and the stone is cool, but it warms quickly beneath your palm. A vibration, or simply your pulse echoing back? Hard to tell. You stay a moment, not seeking meaning, only sharing stillness. A tractor hums faintly somewhere beyond the hedgerow. A dog barks once, then quiets. A car passes the far road, distant as memory. Life breathes around you, yet you stand outside of time, held in a pause older than writing. Clouds drift overhead, slow and heavy, casting moving shadows that play across stone faces. Sunlight breaks through, gilding edges. In those fleeting glimmers, you feel something unnameable, not magic, not myth, but recognition, as though the earth remembers you, even if you forgot it. The circle opens again into wide field. Sheep graze. A woman in a coat walks a dog along a footpath, unaware she is following a ceremonial line walked by thousands before her. The everyday does not diminish the sacred here. It proves it. A place meant to hold life, not separate from it, but cradling it. Sit a moment on the embankment, grass cool beneath you, air still. A crow lands atop a stone, feathers glossy, watching you with black glass eyes. It caws once, not warning, not greeting, merely existing. You exhale, shoulders loosen, thoughts quiet. The circle works not by intention, but by presence, and you realize something. This place was never lost, people simply forgot how to see it. Avebury does not ask for awe, it does not demand reverence. It waits, it endures, it breathes, and in doing so it teaches. When clouds thicken and rain begins, soft, misting, gentle, you do not rush for shelter. Drops cling to your eyelashes, cling to the stone faces. The grass darkens, earth releases its scent, rich and deep. Rain falls the same now as it did 4,000 years ago, touching stone, touching skin, erasing all distance between past and present. You walk slowly, each step a prayer you did not mean to speak. The stones glisten, the earth softens, and the world feels, for a brief precious moment, entirely whole. Evening returns as a sigh. Children's voices drift from the village, muffled laughter. Lamplight glows through cottage windows. The stones fade into dusk again. gentle sentinels wrapped in shadow. You stand in the circle one last time, not to search, not to understand, but simply to be. For what these stones hold is not mystery to solve, it is belonging to feel. This place did not outlast time, it carried time. Through harvest and hunger, through memory and forgetting, through seasons layered like sediment, and still it stands, not triumphant, not defiant, simply present. You turn to leave, and the world feels softer, your breath feels slower, your steps feel lighter, not because you carry nothing, but because you carry everything differently now. Avebury remains behind you, but it also remains within you. A circle carried quietly beneath ribs, a rhythm learned again, a stillness remembered, and as you walk away, a final realization settles like mist in your bones. Some stones were not placed to mark where people stood, they were placed to remind us how to stand at all. The tower that refused to fall. In the cradle of two ancient rivers, where reeds whispered secrets to running water and mud-brick cities rose like patient thoughts from fertile earth, there once stood a tower that did not reach for heaven but remembered it. It rose slowly from clay and devotion, each brick pressed by hands that shook with neither pride nor ambition, but wonder. They called the place Babulu, Gate of the Gods, and the tower at its heart was no arrogance carved against the sky but an offering, a breathing stairway meant not to conquer the heavens but to echo them. Dawn settled gently upon its terraces, bathing each level in gold, turning the baked clay warm beneath bare feet. Workers climbed not with shouts and hammers but with murmured prayers. Baskets of earth held like offerings, voices low as they lifted the weight of meaning stone by stone. There was nothing hurried here. The world then moved with the slowness of rivers, the patience of silt, the certainty of sunrise. From fields around it, farmers walked toward the temple with grain-stained palms, and the scent of sesame oil rose into air still cool from night. Bulls lowed softly in shaded pens. Near canals, women washed reeds and sang songs as old as water. Across the plain the tower waited, not proud, not defiant, but quiet, like a breath held between body and sky. Children chased birds along the lower steps, laughter echoing softly among clay bricks, and old men leaned on staffs watching the city move with a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. Scribes etched promises into wet tablets, priests smoothed woven rugs upon cool floors, incense curled like silk along corridors, and always the tower stood, not climbing higher day by day, but growing with time like a tree rooted in devotion, fed by belief and belonging. At sunrise, light struck its upper chambers first, brushing sacred walls painted with stars, and shadows fell long down terraces until they blended with the city's waking streets. The ziggurat was not smooth like later monuments. Its edges were softened by dust and wind, its bricks marked by hands rather than chisels. It bore the fingerprints of thousands, mothers, fathers, children, craftsmen, each touch a silent vow that stone and sky should meet gently, without struggle. Travelers who arrived from far lands did not marvel at conquest but at calm. For here language was not divided. Trade tongues mingled, prayers overlapped, music from reed pipes drifted across courtyards where potters shaped bowls and bakers pulled flatbread from clay ovens warmed by dawn. Everyone belonged to the same breath, the same earth, the same sun that rose slow and generous over the plain. And at night, when oil lamps flickered along pathways and stars spilled ancient fire across the wide Mesopotamian sky, people climbed the tower's steps, not to challenge the divine, but to stand closer to silence. They laid offerings, dates, grain, honey, a carved bead, a whispered wish, not to demand answers but to soften the boundary between longing and peace. Wind drifted through open chambers, cooling stone, carrying the scent of river reeds and distant jasmine. Sometimes lightning rippled across far desert, and the tower glowed pale against night, as though lit from within by memory older than bricks or breath. Time passed here not in urgency, but in returning. Flood and harvest, sow and reap, sun and moon. No one feared the heavens, no one feared the gods. They walked among them in stillness, in water, in wind, in the curve of the horizon that held the city like a gentle hand. Even when storms rose and riverbanks swelled, the people rebuilt not because of punishment, but because they belonged to this soil as reeds belong to water, as doves belong to rooftops, as prayer belonged to morning air. And so the tower stood, season after season, its shadow stretching and shrinking like the pulse of the earth. Sand drifted, herbs sprouted between bricks, rain washed clay smooth, and always people came, barefoot, steady, humble, climbing not for height but for quiet. Scholars would later say it fell, scribes would twist its memory, distant tongues would speak of pride and punishment, but those who walked its steps knew another story, a story of hands that shaped earth in gratitude, feet that pressed dust in reverence, voices that lifted not to command but to join the sky in soft praise. The tower did not fall, time simply took its shape back into sand and wind and dream. Yet here, in the hush before sunrise, If you close your eyes and breathe with the land, you can feel it still, not in earth or ruin, but in the space between heartbeats, in the hush of dawn over ancient soil, in the quiet wish all humans share but rarely name, not to reach heaven, but to remember we were never separate from it. And in that stillness, the tower rises again, not of brick but of breath, not in sky but in the quiet depth of being, waiting, enduring, unbroken in all the ways that matter. For what was never built in pride cannot fall, it only rests, it only waits, and perhaps, in this soft light, you feel it too, the ancient truth, that rising is not upward but inward, and that the tallest tower ever dreamed is the one that never needed to touch the sky to find it. The door that faced the storm. There are places where the earth opens not out of violence but out of memory. A split in stone, a seam in the landscape, as though the mountain once took a long, quiet breath, and never exhaled. In the hills above El Salvador's Pacific edge, where clouds cling low and birds trace half-forgotten routes through warm dusk air, lies such a place. Two peaks torn apart, not by time alone, but by a story deeper than maps can show. They call it Puerta del Diablo, the Devil's Door. A name chosen later, by tongues that needed explanation, by minds uneasy with silence. But the stones themselves do not whisper of demons. They whisper of wind, of rainfall tumbling from cloud banks like silk, of a country holding grief and beauty together in the same breath, the way mountains hold sky. You approach not with fear, but with curiosity. A road climbs from the valley, winding past homes painted in gentle pastels, past cornfields, past bougainvillea draping fences like purple fire. Children run barefoot along the roadside, laughter quick and bright, dogs doze in doorways. And somewhere, from a house hidden among trees, a radio hums a song about love and loss and the wide sea. Then the trees part, and there it stands, or rather divides. Two pillars of volcanic stone rising from the earth, their faces dark, streaked with moisture, carved not by hands but by pressure older than memory. Between them, a narrow opening, a scar cut into rock, a doorway wide enough for wind to pass and rumor to gather. When fog creeps in from the ocean, it fills the gap like breath-filling lungs. When storms rise, lightning crawls along the rock's spine like silver veins awakening. The air grows cooler here, the world grows quieter, not silent, just slowed. Wind curls around your ankles, carries the scent of eucalyptus and distant rain. Far below, faint and constant, the sea breathes, waves touching sand with soft persistence, as though comforting the shore after every departure. You stand at the foot of the stone divide, and a calm weight settles over your chest. Not dread, not fear, a recognition. This place has seen things. Storms fierce enough to crack branches and scatter roofs. Sunrise after sunrise painting the rock gold, then red, then violet before vanishing. Feet, thousands of them, walking, fleeing, praying, remembering. Whispers in the night when no one should have spoken. History hangs in the air here like mist, never heavy, but always present. A long time ago, before the name took root, before legends shaped the gap into myth, this was simply a mountain, a calm, unbroken ridge, forested, quiet, filled with birdsong and the rustle of leaves. Then the mountain split, some say from earthquake, when hunger in the earth's heart twisted and groaned and forced rock apart. Others say lightning cracked the ridge clean in two. Some, the oldest stories, speak softly of a god walking through stone as though it were water, leaving a doorway as gentle proof of passage. And there are those who say the land opened to release grief it could not carry. Whatever the truth, the stone does not answer. It only stands, unmoved, unmoving, eternal in its stillness. You walk closer. The ground shifts from packed soil to rock, from warm earth to cool stone. Vines cling to the cliffside. Ferns push through cracks. Life, persistent, gentle, quiet. Birds nest in shelves carved by wind. Hawks circle above, riding invisible currents. At dusk, swallows dart through the doorway, silhouettes flitting across darkening rock. You place a hand against the stone. It is cool, smooth in some places, rough in others, a surface shaped by wind, rain, and touch. So many hands before yours, some seeking comfort, some leaving fear behind. Breathe in. There is weight to the air, like the pause between thunder and rain. Walk into the opening. At first it feels narrow, the walls close, as though stone is exhaling around you. Then it widens. A small plateau opens beyond, where wind rushes freely, where the world stretches in rolling folds of green hills, valleys, rooftops tiny in distance, and beyond them, the ocean, vast, patient, a sheet of silver mist and collapsing blue. Clouds pull across the sky like slow ships, shadows drift over the valley below. Somewhere far off, maybe miles away, someone laughs. A tiny sound carried by wind as though time wished you to remember joy. At the edge of the plateau the world falls away. Not sharply, not violently, but like a curtain drawn back. The land opens, soft and endless. You stand at the lip, and the horizon stretches so far your breath evens, your heartbeat steadies, and the noise of life seems like something faint and distant, like a dream half forgotten on waking. In this moment, the name feels wrong. This is not a place of devils. This is a place of dawns and storms and quiet prayers whispered into wind. You imagine those who came before. Farmers resting tools to watch the sky bruise purple before rain. Lovers sharing warmth in the cold hours of early morning. Families lighting candles on the ridge. Flames trembling in wind. Grief and hope braided together like the hills below. Children daring each other to stand at the very edge, eyes wide with thrill. Soldiers once hiding among rocks, breathing quietly, listening for footsteps that did not belong to wind. There is history here. Hard history. Soft history. Human history. The stone remembers every footstep, every held breath, every storm. A drop of rain touches your wrist, then another. The sky shifts, gray deepening, the smell of wet earth rising like incense. The wind grows stronger, brushing hair from your face, pulling gently at your clothes. It is not a warning, it is an invitation. Stay, watch, witness. Clouds gather like mountains in the sky, towering, layered, luminous around the edges, where afternoon light still clings. Thunder murmurs far off, rolling slow like a great animal waking. The first sheets of rain sweep across distant hills, silver curtains drifting across green folds of land. You pull breath into your chest and exhale slowly. The storm approaches not as violence but as inevitability, a reminder that the world breathes too, that the sky has its own pulse, slow and ancient. Here, fear has no place. There is only the hum of the world, steady, deep, a pulse beneath the stone, a heartbeat behind the wind. Someone long ago must have stood where you stand, watching the same clouds coil, hearing the same thunder hum, feeling the same mix of smallness and safety. And perhaps they too realized, this is not a place where evil enters. This is a place where fear leaves. Lightning flashes far on the sea. Not striking, blooming. A bloom of white that spreads and fades, leaving a violet echo. The rain reaches the foothills. The wind carries its scent, ancient, clean, like water that remembers mountain roots. You close your eyes, and the storm speaks, not in language but in rhythm, not in command but in presence. A land scarred and healed, wounded and reborn. A doorway not for devils but for weather, for memory, for those who need to stand at the edge and remember they are still here. And in that wind, in that hush, in that breath held between thunder and rain, you feel something settle inside you. Not fear, not awe, but recognition. This is a door, not between good and evil, but between noise and truth, between wait and release, between carrying and letting go, between storm and stillness. The rain arrives, soft at first, kissing the stone, cooling the air, then stronger, like a lullaby sung by a sky that has seen too much and still believes in cleansing. You do not move, you let it fall, and the world feels lighter, as though the doorway has opened not only in stone, but in you. The rain settles into rhythm, steady and soft, the kind of rain that does not arrive with force, but with understanding. It rolls down the stone beside you like silver threads, collects in tiny streams that trace the rock's history, winding through grooves carved by ages, not seasons. Every droplet seems to carry the memory of the ocean it once belonged to, and perhaps, the promise of its return. Wind brushes your cheek again, no longer urgent, just present, a companion rather than a warning. It weaves through branches, rattles leaves, hums against the stone edges of the pass. The storm has found its voice, and it is not a roar, it is a hymn. Below, roofs shine, slick with rainfall. Smoke from kitchen chimneys turns faint and blue, curling low before vanishing into mist. A dog shakes off water in a courtyard. A woman pulls laundry from a line, arms moving with practiced surety, as though storms are not interruptions here, but old friends announcing themselves by name. And in the distance, always the sea. Endless, breathing, patient. Its horizon blurs into storm cloud, the boundary between sky and ocean dissolving. No one could say where one ends and the other begins, and in that lack of division there is something liberating. Some truths are not lines, they are tides. You breathe deeper, a long inhale, a soft release. The storm passes gradually, as storms do when land and sky understand each other. Clouds thin, light returns, not sudden but shy, a pale illumination that spreads gently across ridge and valley. Raindrops cling to grass blades, trembling, catching the newborn sun like beads of glass laid by unseen hands. The stone where you stand darkens, then begins to lighten as warmth returns. Steam rises in thin whirls from the rock surface, like incense from a forgotten altar. Birds begin again, tentative chirps at first, testing the air, then fuller songs, small triumphant notes that declare the world endures. And you stand still because leaving too soon would feel like interrupting a prayer. When you do move, it is not because you are finished, but because the world has shifted just enough to carry you. Footsteps soft, breath steady, the doorway wide, tall, eternal, rises behind you now, a silhouette against a sky breaking open to light. You notice then that the path is slick, earth pressed smooth by countless feet before yours. Visitors, wanderers, soldiers, farmers, mourners. So many have walked here, some seeking answers, some peace, some nowhere else to go but forward. Their motion has carved a shape into the land, not deep, but certain. A quiet testimony to persistence. And you realize this crack in the mountain is not a wound, it is a passage, not of bodies, of memory. History here is not written in stone, it is carried in wind and rain, in footsteps and whispered stories. It is carried in old songs sung quietly when night settles heavy, songs about loss and returning, about storms endured and skies forgiven. Some say the doorway earned its name from tragedy, lovers who leapt, soldiers who fled, rebels who hid, children who disappeared into night. Some tales are sharp as broken glass, some soft as cloth worn thin by grief. But the land does not argue with stories, it holds them, like rain holds light before falling. You do not need to know which are true. Here, truth breathes differently. The mountain does not speak in fear, it speaks in endurance. Even when violence swept through these hills, when shouts echoed where birds once called, the stone did not break, it simply waited. The wind carried away the noise, and one morning, as always, sunlight returned, lighting the rock like a blessing. You reach a flat rock near the edge and sit. Wet fabric cools your skin. The scent of eucalyptus drifts again, now brightened by the scent of damp soil. A tiny stream trickles beside you, collecting rain before guiding it downslope to join a river you cannot see. For a long time, nothing happens. And in that nothing, everything happens. A cloud becomes a bird, a breath becomes a thought becomes nothing at all. You feel small, not diminished, but right-sized, in a world vast enough to cradle you without noticing your weight. The doorway stands behind you, but you understand now, it is not meant to be crossed in feet alone. Something inside crosses instead. Something heavy loosens, something restless rests. The locals say storms come here to learn patience, and those who enter leave knowing a little more about it too. When at last you rise, the world has softened again. Rainwater drips in slow beads from leaf tips, mud glistens, the clouds retreat toward the horizon, trailing veils of light. You take a final look at the stone columns rising tall behind you. Edges softened by mist, presence steady as a heartbeat. No devil waits there, only wind, only memory, only the earth split open in a way that invites rather than threatens. A doorway not to darkness, but to quiet, to stillness, to the part of you that needed a sky with no ceiling, a storm with no hurry, a place where breath can match the pace of mountains. You walk away slowly, steps sinking into soft ground, and the world feels different. Not transformed, remembered. The path bends back toward life, toward voices and color and warmth. A bird flies overhead, wings catching the new sunlight, and behind you, the mountain stands open, waiting for the next traveler who needs not escape, but exhale. The door that faced the storm. Mist clings to the ridge long before the sun rises. The world here wakes slowly, first in breath, then in color. A faint silver edge lifts the horizon, revealing folds of green hills sleeping under a curtain of cloud. Below them, valleys hold the last quiet of night, untouched by footsteps or engines or the sharp noise of day. Above, the first birds call from hidden branches, their voices small and certain against the vastness of the sky. And in the middle of this quiet breath stands a scar in stone, a doorway carved not by hands but by time and pressure, and something deeper than force. Two walls of rock, tall and solemn, facing one another like guardians, as though the mountain once closed around a secret and then split to reveal it. Puerta del Diablo, the door of the devil, but the stone never named itself. Names came later, given by people who needed explanations, or warnings, people who feared what they could not understand. They looked at the split mountain, the wild wind pouring through it, and whispered of demons, of escapes, of something terrible, waiting beyond. Yet when you walk here, in the hush before dawn, there is no malice, there is wind, there is memory, there is a pulse beneath the earth steady and patient. The air smells of eucalyptus and damp soil, of night-cooled rock and the faint sweetness of distant flowers. Leaves tremble as you pass, not in fear, but in greeting, as though the hillside has been waiting for footsteps and breath and presence. A trail rises gently, worn smooth by generations. Soldiers once, pilgrims once, lovers once, wanderers always. Your shoes press into the soft earth. Beneath you, roots hold the mountain together, stubborn and ancient. Above, wisps of cloud drift low enough to touch, and somewhere far below, hidden yet always present, the Pacific exhales against the shore, so distant it is almost imagined, yet powerful enough to be felt through the soles of your feet. The space between the stone walls narrows as you approach. From afar, it looked wide, an opening. Up close, it feels intimate. The stone edges rise like broken cathedral towers, darkened by rain, streaked by years of weather. Moss clings to cracks, Ferns curl from narrow crevices, drinking from the fog. You lift your hand and brush the surface lightly, cold, then warm, then silent, like the skin of something very much alive, simply holding its breath. When wind rushes through the gap, it does not howl, it sighs, long, low, unbroken. A sound like fabric drawn across a harp string, or like the memory of a storm rather than the storm itself. It curls around you, pulls gently at your clothes, touches your hair, and moves on without urgency. It is neither welcome nor warning, it simply is. You step into the gap, the world alters, sound drops away. The air feels denser, as though you have walked not forward but inward. Stone on either side rises higher now, walls leaning slightly, creating a space that feels carved by intention, not pressure. It is neither cave nor canyon, but something between, a place where the earth opened just enough for souls to pass. Stories live here, those told aloud, those whispered, those never spoken. They say lovers once met here, when the world outside roared too loudly, and only the space between stones could hear their promises. They say warriors crossed here in nights of danger, breathing hard, hearts heavy, trusting the mountain to hide them. They say grieving mothers climbed to this doorway and left flowers in the cracks, hoping the wind might carry prayers where feet could not tread. They also say darker things: escape, exile, disappearance, blood. Shadowed stories from turbulent years when fear lived in footsteps and voices were swallowed by night. But history never settles in one shape. Even where pain lived, so did hope. Even where tears fell, so did vows and dreams and songs. The mountain held all of it, like a chest storing every heartbeat ever spilled into its soil. A drop of rain lands on your hand. Another follows. Not a storm, just the first breath of one. The kind of rain that feels thoughtful, almost curious. It darkens the stone, beads on leaves, cools the air. The taste of electricity hums faint on your tongue, the atmosphere tightening around you, gathering energy like a drawn bowstring. Clouds shift overhead. White becomes pearl, then silver, then deeper, gathering weight. The light softens, shadows blur, and as the wind strengthens, you feel the smallest instinctive lift in your chest. A sensation old as the first breath ever taken, anticipation of weather, respect for sky. Thunder murmurs far off, a low rolling sound. Not anger, announcement. On this ridge, storms do not arrive suddenly, they reveal themselves. They approach like slow truths. The mountain watches, unbothered. It has seen countless tempests. It has tasted lightning. It has held rain and sun and silence in equal measure. It has endured. You walk forward through the doorway and emerge into open space again. The land falls away in gentle waves, hills stacked like sleeping backs of animals, beyond them faint rooftops, a patchwork of fields, then farther still, the delicate shimmer of the ocean, glowing silver beneath gathering clouds. The wind rushes up from below, cool and constant. It wraps around your arms, pulls lightly at your collar, as if urging you to breathe deeper, to feel the weight leave your shoulders. In the distance, a hawk glides, wings outstretched, still as stone, held aloft by invisible hands. Somewhere behind you, a drop of water falls from the lip of rock, then another, then many. Rain becomes steady, soft first, then thicker, a steady percussion on leaves, on stone, on earth. You remain still. There is no need to hurry. The body knows when it is safe to rest. And here, in this place once feared, rest arrives easily. Wind crosses your skin like memory. Rain cools your thoughts. The mountain watches, patient as always. Storms are not enemies here. They are teachers. They remind you the world is not built from silence alone. It breathes in calm and thunder both. And you remember, you do too. Lightning flickers, not striking, just illuminating cloud edges like veins of light. The world does not darken, it deepens. Every color softens, every outline blurs. The doorway behind you becomes shadow and shape, a silent witness to every storm it has ever known, and every quiet that followed. You close your eyes, rain on skin, wind in hair, thunder like a heartbeat far away, the smell of wet earth grounding you to every life that ever stood on this ridge, and breathed through a storm. And slowly, like dawn returning behind closed eyelids, a stillness grows. Not the stillness of emptiness, the stillness of belonging. You open your eyes again. Clouds lift slightly, light filters through, pale gold spilling across the hills. A faint rainbow arcs somewhere distant, delicate as silk thread. The storm is not gone, it has simply passed through, and you feel lighter as though part of you passed with it. You turn once more to the stone doorway. For a moment, it seems different. Not sinister, not sacred, simply honest. A break in the world where what is inside can find its way out, and what belongs within you can remain. A threshold not between good and evil, but between holding on and letting go. The rock stands silent, indifferent to names and stories. It does not demand fear. It does not offer salvation. It simply is. A door that faces storms without flinching, and remembers every person who faced their own storms here, and still stood. You breathe once more, and begin to walk back down the path. Not faster, not slower, just right. Wind follows behind like a gentle companion. Rain lightens, turning to mist. And though the world below waits, its streets, its voices, its bright hum of living, you carry the mountain with you. A doorway in the earth, a doorway in the heart. Neither closing, never truly closed, always there, quietly reminding. Storms do not break everything they touch. Some places, some souls are carved open by them and remain standing. Thank you for wandering through the quiet places time forgot. If you felt the stillness here, please like, subscribe, and share where and when you're watching from. Your presence keeps these hidden echoes alive. Until next time, rest easy. The past will wait for you.